Today for Devotions with Daniella, we are reading Generation Hope, How Inclusive Economics Can Help Us All Thrive. This is one of the books that I'm reading for my own process of deconstructing all the bad stuff. And if you would like to join me, you can get copies attached here. This is Chapter 7, Inclusive Economics. Economists got it wrong, and some of them are even owning up to it. Trickle-down economics don't trickle down. In fact, wealth has trickled up instead. By the time economists began to realize this, wealthy beneficiaries had already become all too powerful as market power got translated into political power. Turns out, unfettered free markets without interferences like higher taxes and regulations are not the solution to every economic problem. Globalization and advances in technology do not, on their own, bring prosperity to all. It's beyond time to shift toward an inclusive economy in which opportunity expands for everyone, not just the rich. And prosperity is more broadly shared instead of concentrated, especially for those facing the greatest barriers to advancing their well-being. The good news is this economy has already been imagined, down to 5 specific elements: growth, participation, opportunity, stability, and sustainability. That is, inclusive economics. About a decade ago, when Greece was struggling to service its debt, a joke about the power of liquidity, an essential component to growth, made the rounds. It begins on a slow day in a small Greek village. The streets are deserted and it is raining. Times are tough, everybody is in debt, and everybody lives on credit. On this particular day, a rich German tourist is driving through the village. She stops at the local hotel and lays a €100 note on the desk, telling the hotel owner she wants to inspect the room upstairs in order to spend the night. The owner gives her the keys, and as soon as the visitor walks upstairs, the hotelier grabs the €100 note and runs next door to pay his debt to the butcher. The butcher takes the €100 note and runs down the street to repay his debt to the pig farmer. The pig farmer takes the €100 note and heads off to pay her bill at the supplier of feed and fuel. The guy at the farmer's co-op takes the €100 note and runs to pay his drinks bill at the tavern. The bartender slips the money along to the local prostitute drinking at the bar, who has been facing hard times and has had to offer him services on credit. The prostitute then rushes to the hotel and pays off her room bill to the hotel owner with that same €100 note. The hotel proprietor then places the €100 note back on the counter so the rich traveler won't suspect a thing. At that moment, the traveler comes down the stairs and picks up the €100 note. As she pockets the money, she says the rooms are not satisfactory and leaves town. For a village reliant on external cash, it may seem like a bad result for the money not to enter their economy. Or, within the economy, that no one produced anything and no one earned anything. Yet the whole village is now out of debt and looking to the future with a lot more optimism. How? Because €600 worth of goods and services were actually produced, and each of those 6 people earned €100 each. Before the tourists arrived, the village folk didn't have the liquidity, aka cash of their own, and thus borrowed goods or services on credit. When the tourist arrived, her €100 note became the liquidity needed to repay what each of the 6 people borrowed. This worked because people were able to produce and were willing to lend their goods and services on credit. If they hadn't been willing to provide credit, then €600 worth of goods and services wouldn't have been produced. This is the reality all around the world, in poor communities where almost everyone in the community has the ability to produce, but lacks the ability to purchase. While framed as a joke or silly story, this is actually an excellent demonstration of inclusive economics, also known as inclusive growth or inclusive capitalism. It refers to an economic approach that emphasizes creating equitable opportunities, reducing disparities, and ensuring that the benefits of economic growth are shared broadly among every section of society. Inclusive growth also means responsible growth. It's not growth at any cost or growth for the sake of growth, i.e. to improve shareholder value. It has a longer-term perspective with a focus on productive employment as a means of increasing the incomes of poor and excluded groups. The goal of inclusive economics is to achieve economic development alongside increased living standards in a way that not only leads to overall prosperity, but also improves the well-being of all individuals, particularly those who have historically been marginalized or disadvantaged. Everyone benefits in inclusive economics, not just the richest in society. The concept of inclusive economics has its origins in the broader fields of economics and social policy, where scholars, policymakers, and advocates have long recognized the importance of addressing social inequalities and promoting shared prosperity. While there isn't a single specific origin point for the term inclusive economics, the principles and ideas that underlie the concept have evolved over time through various economic theories, social movements, and policy discussions. Economists love to talk about the pie that represents the economy, how to grow it, how to slice it, who's getting the biggest share of it, whether the pie is being split fairly, etc. Over the last 40 years, the size of the pie has grown tremendously, but as inequality widened, the pie became more and more disproportionately split. This resulted in the illusion of a zero-sum system in which people think the size of the pie is fixed. If one slice increases, another slice must get smaller, and that perception reflects reality. There are winners and losers. There are those enjoying a 9-course meal with dessert and those going hungry. Inclusive economics seeks to increase the overall pie, not just for the rich, but for everyone. Before you get discouraged by the challenge ahead of us to achieve this goal, take heart. Thinkers, strategists, activists, and many others around the world, the dreamers and the doers, are working on it. Scholars, policymakers, and advocates have long recognized the importance of addressing social inequalities and promoting shared prosperity. Key moments in the evolution of inclusive economics include: in the 1990s, the United Nations Development Program introduced the Human Development Index, HDI, shifting the focus of development from purely economic indicators to a broader view that includes education, health, and other dimensions of well-being. The 2008 financial crisis, along with growing concerns about income inequality, led to renewed discussions about the need for more equitable economic systems. In 2015, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals encompassed a holistic approach to development that included goals related to poverty reduction, gender equality, environmental sustainability, and social inclusion. Specifically, note Goal 8, promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. Growing awareness of global inequalities and poverty has spurred discussions about ways to address these issues through policies that prioritize inclusive growth and social justice. Governments and policymakers in various countries continue to introduce policies and initiatives aimed at promoting inclusive growth, reducing poverty, and addressing social disparities. Acknowledging that we can't leave these goals to enlightened self-interest is a first step in rising consciousness. While it's true that making decisions that benefit oneself can also lead to positive outcomes for others and the greater community, if it were that easy, we would be living in an inclusive world, not one dominated by neoliberal economic woes. Ultimately, creating a more harmonious and sustainable society requires a shift in the way we approach economics, from both the bottom up and top down. This begins with growth, the first of what I see as 5 characteristics of an inclusive economy. And we'll get to that tomorrow.